United States exits UNESCO, citing woke agenda and anti-Israel bias. The United States has once again announced its withdrawal from the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, marking the third such departure in the organization's history, and the second under a Trump administration. This decision, which is set to take effect in December 2026, reverses the Biden administration's move to rejoin the agency just 2 years prior. The primary reasons cited for this latest withdrawal revolve around political and ideological disagreements. The U.S. government points to UNESCO's perceived anti-Israel bias, particularly its decision to admit Palestine as a member state and its stances on certain Jewish holy sites. Additionally, the administration has expressed strong objections to what it describes as UNESCO's promotion of woke, divisive, cultural, and social causes, including its diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) policies, which it deems inconsistent with an America First foreign policy agenda. Concerns about UNESCO's globalist ideological agenda and its focus on UN Sustainable Development Goals have also been voiced. UNESCO, headquartered in Paris, aims to promote peace and security through international cooperation in education, science, and culture. While the U.S. currently contributes about 8% of UNESCO's budget, down from its historical contributions, the withdrawal is seen by some as a blow to multilateralism and a diminished U.S. role in global cultural and scientific initiatives. Critics of the U.S. decision argue that it undermines international cooperation on critical issues like climate change research, ocean sustainability, and the protection of World Heritage Sites, even though U.S. World Heritage Sites will not lose their status. This repeated cycle of U.S. engagement and disengagement highlights the complex and often politically charged nature of its relationship with international organizations. The Trump administration's decision to withdraw the U.S. from UNESCO for the second time is driven by several key reasons, reflecting a consistent foreign policy approach. Perceived anti-Israel bias. A central reason for the withdrawal is the administration's strong contention that UNESCO exhibits a persistent anti-Israel bias. This stems from various actions and resolutions by the organization. One significant point of contention was UNESCO's 2011 decision to admit Palestine as a full member state, a move the U.S. opposed as it believes the status of Palestine should be determined through direct negotiations. Furthermore, the administration has cited UNESCO's resolutions regarding Jewish holy sites, particularly those that label them as Palestinian World Heritage locations or refer to Palestine as occupied by Israel, which are seen as diminishing historical Jewish connections to these sites. Opposition to woke and divisive agendas. Another primary reason articulated by the administration is UNESCO's alleged promotion of woke, divisive, cultural, and social causes that are seen as inconsistent with American values and an America First foreign policy. This includes objections to UNESCO's diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, its 2023 Anti-Racism Toolkit, and its 2024 Transforming Mentalities campaign. The administration views these initiatives as a globalist ideological agenda that conflicts with the policies supported by the American electorate. They argue that UNESCO has strayed from its core mission and is instead advancing a progressive social agenda that is deemed out of step with U.S. national interests. Alignment with America First principles. Ultimately, this withdrawal aligns with President Trump's broader America First foreign policy philosophy, which prioritizes national sovereignty and questions the value of multilateral institutions perceived as undermining U.S. interests or not serving them effectively. The administration believes that continued involvement in UNESCO is not in the national interest of the United States, particularly when it views the organization as politicized, promoting an ideological agenda, or being disproportionately influenced by rivals like China. This stance reflects a skepticism towards global governance and a preference for bilateral relationships over multilateral engagement when it comes to advancing U.S. objectives. The U.S. withdrawal from UNESCO will have several significant consequences, impacting both the organization itself and broader international relations. Financial and programmatic impact on UNESCO. While the U.S. contribution to UNESCO's budget has decreased to about 8%, its withdrawal will still lead to a reduction in funding. UNESCO has prepared for this by diversifying its funding sources and implementing structural reforms since the first Trump-era withdrawal in 2017. However, even with these preparations, a reduction in resources could constrain the scope and scale of some of its programs. This includes initiatives related to education, scientific cooperation, cultural heritage preservation, and combating anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial. While UNESCO states it will continue its missions, inevitably reduced resources may impact the reach of its projects, especially in areas like literacy campaigns, cultural preservation in conflict zones, and scientific research collaborations. Diminished U.S. influence and global standing. The withdrawal signifies a further retreat of the U.S. from multilateral institutions under an America First foreign policy. This disengagement could diminish U.S. influence in shaping global norms, standards, and policies related to education, science, and culture. When the U.S. is not at the table, other nations, notably China, may increasingly fill the void, potentially shifting the balance of power and influence within UNESCO and other international bodies. This can affect areas like the development of ethical guidelines for artificial intelligence or global education standards, where the U.S. might lose its voice. Allies may also view this as part of a troubling pattern of disengagement, potentially straining traditional partnerships. Geopolitical repercussions and perception. The stated reasons for withdrawal, particularly the anti-Israel bias and opposition to woke agendas, reflect a polarization of international discourse. This public exit could be interpreted as a rejection of multilateralism and a preference for bilateral engagement, potentially weakening the overall UN system. It may embolden other nations to similarly question their commitments to international organizations. Furthermore, the withdrawal's timing, just 2 years after the Biden administration rejoined, highlights a lack of consistent U.S. foreign policy regarding international bodies, which can undermine credibility and predictability on the global stage. Economic predictions. The immediate prediction for U.S.-Philippine trade is that the 20% U.S. tariff on Philippine goods, set for August 1st, 2025, will either take full effect or be significantly reduced depending on the outcome of ongoing negotiations. If the tariff is fully implemented, Philippine exports to the U.S. will likely face higher prices, potentially leading to a decrease in demand and reduced revenue for Philippine industries. This could result in job losses in sectors heavily reliant on exports, such as electronics, textiles, and agriculture. The Philippines may respond by intensifying efforts to diversify its export markets, seeking new opportunities in other Asian countries or Europe. Conversely, if a mutually beneficial bilateral trade deal is successfully negotiated, the tariff could be lowered to a more acceptable rate, or even eliminated for certain products. Such a deal would provide stability for Philippine businesses and encourage continued trade flow. However, any agreement might include conditionalities that could limit the Philippines' economic autonomy, such as restrictions on trade with certain nations or limitations on government subsidies for local industries. Geopolitical predictions. The U.S.-Philippines security alliance is predicted to continue strengthening, particularly in response to China's growing assertiveness in the South China Sea. This will likely involve an increase in joint military exercises, further U.S. military aid to modernize the Philippine armed forces, and potentially the deployment of more advanced U.S. defense systems to the region. The goal is to enhance the Philippines' deterrence capabilities and bolster regional stability. However, this increased cooperation is also predicted to escalate tensions with China. Beijing views the enhanced U.S. military presence and activities as provocative, which could lead to more frequent and assertive counter-responses in the disputed waters, including naval and Coast Guard maneuvers. While the intent is deterrence, there's a heightened risk of miscalculation or unintended escalation in this highly contested area. The U.S. withdrawal from UNESCO further underscores its America First approach, which could lead to reduced U.S. influence in multilateral forums and potentially create a vacuum that other global powers might seek to fill.